Hello and welcome to the Binge Thinker episode 24. My name is Jameel Raymond. It is a pleasure to have you here as always. Today, my guest is a multi-dimensional creative, fantastic musician, and emerging comedian, Mr. Gabriel Vargas.
Thanks for having me, Jameel. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolute pleasure to have you in. I've introduced you. How would you define yourself further for the people at home?
Wow. That's a tricky question. Defining oneself, hey. Look, I'm on, a journey like we all are in one way or another. But for me, I think what's come to the forefront is using my gifts, my talents and creativity, music, comedy to shine light on things that are happening in the world. For me, I think one of the things that have surfaced in the last few years is trying to collapse this division that I'm seeing in society. You know, the polarity that's existing, and what ways we can approach to sort of still have distinction without division. You know, still celebrate our differences without absolutely having to be at each other's throats. So for me, it's. I would define myself as that I'm on this journey to uncover that by using the talents that I've been given. Yeah. It's probably the most succinct way of putting it.
Yeah.
But, that's always an ever-changing, your self-concept is always, for me anyway, and it's ever-evolving concept, it's never permanent truth.
Yeah.
If I go back 10 years, I was a musician that probably even further 15 years. I just wanted to be a rock star. It's a totally different way of approaching music.
Yeah.
It's quite egoic sense of like, I just want to be a rock star. I want to, play stadiums, sell out shows, and I want to do this and do that. And now it's sort of more about using music as a means to connect, to inspire, to heal, and likewise with comedy.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally get that. People grip so frequently onto the concept of identity and who they are. And I've said this so many times in this fucking podcast, over and over again, identity is the highest form of commitment. We commit so much to what we perceive us to be, but you need to let go of that perception of identity, or at least increase the dimensions of it.
Of course.
To not be so fragile to when it changes and evolves, right? You think about, there's so many ways that is held, the current form of identity in the self and how you materialize that. The guy that fucking peaked in high school, the dad that hasn't changed his haircut in 30 years, the kids that are still in the emo phase, right? They are so tied to that concept of identity, but it's constantly evolving and flowing. And, we were talking before about there is latent and dormant parts of your personality that you didn't know existed or haven't given them the light of day because you may have cast them into the shadow because you're afraid to approach them for whatever reason.
Correct.
I was actually a few weeks ago, I was away and I read this little book of Zen wisdom. It was at the Airbnb I was staying at. And, they say like the highest form of self is no self. When you cannot define who you are and you are just ever present in what you are doing, that is the truest form of self. Because you're too involved in what you are doing in that present moment to conceptualize what your identity is and how you can describe it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I have to constantly think about, and I sort of relate that back to being, when you're in the moment, you're not thinking about, you're not matter, right? You are energy, you are presence.
Well, this is the thing, I think matter, that, using that term materializing or matter, this very materialistic view of our identity of ourselves, whether it's like, my skin color or, my gender or my sex or whatever. And we like to group ourselves into this, and then we identify so strongly with it, which, look, I'm not saying is necessarily a wrong or a bad thing, but I'm really curious to see what's beyond that, because in this age of identity politics where we're at each other's throats and we can't find any common ground and we can't celebrate our differences, appreciate one another, there has to be something beyond this. It's just so prevalent for me, how I see the world, that I'm curious to explore ideas, paradigms, systems that can transcend this way of being, and connecting with each other on a much more non-materialistic way of seeing each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm very curious about that. I like for me, I read a lot of esoteric stuff, like anthroposophy. I'm doing some study on Steiner's works, and because I feel like in that era, that sort of late 1800s into the early 1900s, there was a massive movement where I feel like the people of that time, Jung and Steiner, you got Theosophy, all these different movements, and it was playing itself out in the artistic world as well. It's like they were tapping into something.
Yeah.
And the way that they explained it, there seems to be some truth or some meaning there that requires more exploration. And I feel that's sort of been suppressed, a little bit, and people aren't aware of it.
Yeah.
And I think there are clues there, so I've been reading a lot of that sort of work and trying to bring that into our current world, and trying to apply it. I'm very intrigued by it all.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I did a previous ep on this pod about Stoic Wisdom.
Yes.
And now, I've been getting to things like the Tao. And I've got the book of I Ching downstairs as well. And, for me, there's a big component to, knowledge is one of our most sacred of passages throughout time, because without knowledge, we pass down knowledge generation to generation. And if there is wisdom from literally, 2,000 years ago and beyond that is still prevalent and permeates today, there is elements of truth to that surpass time and the matter world and the physical world.
Yes.
And that's wisdom that is it's not physical, right? That's knowledge.
Yes.
And if that's passed through that amount of time, it's got to fucking have something in there. So how can we, how do we pull these things back to the basics? And reapply them over and over again? And that's a philosophical approach I've had in the last 18 months to 2 years, right? Just get the basics of these things right. People talk about like, martial arts or any physical art. You're really just doing the basics over and over again.
Yoga, is a big one as well.
Any sport. You talk about, Kobe or Jordan. They're all just fucking shooting buckets and doing the basics, absolutely nailing them day after day after day.
Yeah.
So you've got to go, okay, if in a time where people had so much complexity to survive but found the simplicity in the existence from back then, how much more effective would it be now when we are even more chaotic and lost our way in the modern world? Yes, there's less physical danger, but there's so much more psychological danger that we perceive in the modern world.
Massively.
Yeah, and it comes to the media and what's going on around us. So how can you apply? They didn't have those props. They had, there's something on this fucking stone tablet about what's happening in fucking Theosopolis or some fucking faraway land. That wasn't a problem for us back then. I was thinking about this the other day, actually. It's one of the problems with modern society now, particularly with the news, is that it makes us care about things that we shouldn't care about. And this is going to sound a bit dark, right? But if you think about like what's happening in Ukraine, if this was 100 years ago or even 50 years ago, we wouldn't have given a shit because it's too far away for us to comprehend or even matter. Like it has zero effect in our lives. But now, thanks to the news and the way that we've consumed media and the way that it's biased towards us, towards action and towards energetic empathy, we have to care about it now. But how much does that necessarily affect our lives? Little to none.
Yeah.
About the atrocity of what is there.
Yes.
That's just an interesting shift in the perspective, is that we've been more inclined to care about the world. Now, that works in two ways. It's positive, right? Because we show more empathetic at a global level, which is a good thing. But we need to acknowledge that that's an evolution of empathy. Yeah. And we're still navigating that.
Yeah. And not only that, I think you raise a good point. Like, we are bombarded with all this information, the way that the social media interconnects us all, and then trying to navigate and figure out, amongst all that data and information, what is true? What is real? You know, there's so much going on behind what we're presented with. And what I'm discovering, again, and this is always open to change and evolution, but right now is like the more that we turn that inwards into ourselves and find out, okay, well, what is it about us that we hold to be true, or, you know, what are our beliefs and where are they born from and how do they get there, and unraveling those parts of ourselves. I went to the core of that. That kind of flips itself out, so the sort of intrinsic understanding becomes our external perception of reality.
Yeah.
So once this becomes more authentic, we can see other things for as they are, you know. And that's an ongoing journey, right? It doesn't stop.
It's a constant evolution.
You know, there was a book I read a few years ago, In Search of the Miraculous. It's a guy called Ouspensky, but he writes based on one of his mentors, Gurdjieff, his name is. And he talks about this idea, which is really fascinating. It's something that's sort of stayed in my mind. And I've only just, though, I said to my girlfriend the other day, I was like, you know what, I'm going to start doing this as a task for myself. But just to give a bit of a backtrack, he kind of explains that, you know, as human beings, we kind of think in a naive way. You know, we're not really fully comprehending the complexities of our makeup and our being. You know, this idea that we're a tabula rasa, you know, this blank slate that just comes into the world, when we know and we're learning that, you know, maternal stresses obviously impacts the fetus. We have intergenerational trauma, and that's only like before we're born, right? And then as we grow and develop into adults, we have a vast life of, you know, indulgences and in all kinds of weakness, you know, shutting our eyes to our own errors, you know, trying to avoid all uncomfortable truths, blaming others, all these things that build up over time. So we're not working with a clean slate here. There's so much that's built up in this. And what Gurdjieff says is that after years of this kind of behavior and sometimes a necessity, because we may be trying to just get by or overcome some kind of trauma, you know, and these things get suppressed. But what he calls them, or what he describes them as, these artificial appliances that kind of build in the human, and he calls them buffers. And these buffers are like a protective mechanism because, well, like buffers, they lessen the shocks, you know, because if we didn't have them, we'd be in a constant state of friction and realizing that we're all just fucking mad. You know, and these buffers are held by contradictions in our beliefs, in our thoughts, in our actions, in our words. And he explains this idea of, like, you know, that we need to sort of meet these buffers where they are and basically remove them, like work through them. It's almost like a bit of shadow work, right? Because once we create that friction, once we shock ourselves into being, that's when something new arises. I think this is where, and I saw one of your podcasts talking about psychedelics are great because they just strip those buffers away. You don't have a fucking option.
That's your ego.
It's gone. You know, and so we are all, myself included, operating with these buffers. And so this is, I think, one of these practices I was saying to my girlfriend's like, I'm going to start writing down all the contradictions that I have. Because they exist. I mean, I'm just bringing awareness to them. And once you understand that in yourself, you realize everyone is operating from this. And a lot of someone's beliefs or their stance on a certain topic or thing is just a narrative. It's just a story that they're telling themselves. Necessarily isn't I'm telling the truth. It is telling the truth.
Or it believes to be the truth.
Or it is telling a lie. This buffer, you know. And I'm fascinated by that, like within myself, like, you know, and this is a very, I was talking to my mate the other day about this, and this is a simple example, but, you know, I just did a really solid workout and then I'm driving and I'm like, I'm going to get a chocolate because I work really hard and I deserve it. Even though I know chocolate's terrible for me, I don't really need it. I'm probably going to eat it and I'm going to feel shit afterwards that I had it. But the narrative that creeps in and starts saying, no, you deserve it. No, come on, mate, you go. And this is just a very basic, simple one. But as you go deeper in, there's so many held beliefs and
fuck. The processes.
So But we're all like that.
Yeah.
And so once we realize that, I think we can approach each other with a little more compassion, a little more humility, and less assertiveness and aggressiveness. Like, no, this is right and I'm right. You know, because we're complex. Yeah. And a lot of the situations that are arising are complex. And if we can't enter them with discussion around curiosity, of exploration, of compassion, non-judgmental kind of approach, we're just
butting heads
forever.
Yeah.
You know, and as I said to you earlier on, I think that there has to be another way. It's got to be another approach. We're just feeding the same paradigm.
Yeah. By being sucked into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I really believe that internal work is imperative to then being able to approach the external world.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, you know, there's a lot of what you've talked about is, you know, what I've previously mentioned in this podcast, right? The two things that come to mind most prominently is, one of my big mantras is up there is unlearning is just as important as learning, because you have to unwind, you know, for me, 30 years of programming in certain ways that are traumatic, are damaging, are completely wrong. And yes, this cultivation of self-awareness is one of the key aspects of higher cognitive function and of higher consciousness, is the awareness of yourself and the world around you. Because we are expanding our awareness from the survival instinct of being a chimp, right? Checking for predators, for now analyzing broader social fabrics and networks and models for their psychological safety. And that's an evolution, right? And you can see that in different people. So it's that process, these things that you're talking about, we have to unlearn those. And I've talked about on this pod again in the past is like, reprogramming is an essential part of this experience of trying to grow, self-heal, self-analyze. I think I was talking to Fia about this, but you know, Hey Fia. Do you know Naval Ravikant?
No, I'm not familiar.
He's a billionaire investor,
right?
Really, you know, a champion of mindfulness in the tech industry, and just a really fucking smart guy. Really, really smart. And he said that like one of the key fundamental skills that you need to know to be successful in life is like arithmetic, spelling, communication. And one of them was programming. And he talked about technical programming being an essential skill to survive and to thrive in the new digital world, in the new world. And I'm not a programmer, but I'm more of a personal programmer. Because now through this process of self-awareness and working on my own shit, I have, you know, you're talking about when you see the people's processes, I see that constantly in people. I almost see them as software and hardware, right? Your matter of being is your hardware. Your software is your thought processes, your belief systems. What are the applications that are out of date that need an update or need a refresh, maybe need to be removed altogether? And you can see those belief systems and the way that people operate by the way they communicate with you.
Of course.
Right? You can see if a person's obese, okay, their hardware is not very good. Why? Because their software is telling them to do certain processes that get them into this state, which is not efficient, right? You can.
And you're not speaking from experience, right?
Yeah. I had to change the belief systems in my own head, and then I see that in other people. And that creates empathy, right? Because I understand that I've been in that place.
Of course.
But then also too, you can't help but see. It's like seeing the Matrix in a new way. Right?
It's exactly right. Once that work is done on yourself, you start seeing it in others. But as you said, it creates empathy, creates compassion, because like, hey, I've been there. Like, I'm no better than you.
No.
You know, I'm not going to sit here and like give you some didactic spiel about why you should be doing this or that.
Yeah.
Because everyone in their own time, you know, it's and I think this is coming back to like, you know, music and comedy. They're great vehicles to be able to sort of like do it in such a way that isn't preaching, but is in a way that's just like, hey, this is what I've uncovered in myself, and perhaps it's something that is worth exploration. You know, the universal languages, really.
I mean, music is based on math. Math is universal language.
Exactly.
You know, and I've said this again, another pod. You know, music and comedy are just waves, We communicate in wavelengths, in waveforms.
Yeah.
Our vibration, our frequency, our tone. Music is just 12 different tones and frequencies that are probably slightly off. You should be at 432 megahertz instead of 440, right? And comedy is just voice. It's just tone. And if good comedy follows music, it follows cadence, follows pattern.
There is.
Right?
Yes.
So once you get down to these fundamentals of how we communicate, how we operate in the metaphysical world and the physical world, annotating those becomes the secret sauce.
Yeah.
Right? You know, how can we create great art and create messages and great communication? We do it through art forms. And those art forms are most often just manipulations of light and sound, right? Light, sound, wave.
I will add also
form.
with connection to something like resourcing, as we discussed before, from something like spirit or whatever you want to call it, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Because that way of approaching art, I think, is becoming less prevalent in our current society, right? Like it's just, you know, art for the sake of beauty, art for the sake of gifting. You know, in our commodified society, you know, it's like let's churn out hits or let's just the lowest common denominator kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And it's missing, you know, and I feel that if we're going to get out of this, you know, this mess that we're in, it's almost like we need to go back to that. It has to be art, music. You can't, the more you try and diminish these intangibles like music, you know, comedy, even art, love, the more you try and reduce it to some kind of mechanistic thing, it ceases to have its power. Like good music, good art. You can't. You try and like go, right, reduce love to its, you can't.
You can't.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if we can more tap into that way of operating, if that was our software, what could we create out of that is more of a benefit to humankind, to human beings, to our own interactions, you know, in a way that's not degrading the environment, that's creating polarization, that's, you know, ruining the earth, because the earth inherently is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And we are part of the earth. We're one with it. But as long as we continue to see ourselves separate from it, we're going to keep taking from it, annihilating it, and we're doing it to ourselves. We don't even see that, you know. So, I mean, there's a question for you. How would you say, because I mean, I'm asking you this because you've been in the comedy sort of business longer than I have, but I'm curious to know, I'll probably answer it in regards to music, but as a vehicle or as a tool, how can comedy be used to facilitate some kind of revolution in the way that we perceive and see the world?
Yeah.
Well, how would you answer that?
Good comedy has a layer of truth to it. Right? And just like we were talking about before, truth can permeate everything. It permeates time, it permeates matter, it permeates emotional states. Great comedy has meaning and purpose. Yes, it can make you laugh, but you know, there is a dose of medicine inside the laughter, inside the perspective. And we know it works because you wouldn't be fucking laughing at it if it wasn't true, right? You know, one of my favorite comedians is Patrice O'Neill. Yeah. And one of the things he says is you can't fuck with the truth. And he says some things that, you know, are considered, you know, sexist, racist, incredibly demeaning, but people laugh. People have that aha moment because there is something in the greater collective, in the greater consciousness, something beyond what they perceive to know that gets them, it hits them that frequency. Yeah. So the answer to that is the truth in it. Yeah. Is that alignment in the perspective. So, but that just depends on the type of comedy you do, right? Are you there, you know, and there's no invalid ways to do comedy. At the end of the day, if the audience is laughing, you've done your job. But if you really want to create impact, if you really want to make something of yourself, be one of the greats, you probably got to have those elements of truth, and you're doing it in such a way that you've dressed it up in prose and tone and delivery. Yeah. Right? Because it is still just pushing a feeling through sound, right? Again, you are aligning a room full of people onto your same logical vibration when you are doing comedy. And when that's done right, it's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Just like when music is done right, you feel it, right? You feel in your head when you do comedy right. You get a room full of people laughing, amazing. But they had to all connect to that perspective. And if you've done it right, a great punchline, snap, everyone's there at once.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah.
And that's what, you think about all the great comedians that have come over time, you know, the ones that are legends like George Carlin, Pryor, even now, like even the greats.
Bill Hicks, I love Bill Hicks.
Yeah.
So great.
And he wasn't even that funny.
I know, but he was
truthful and impactful, right?
Correct.
Because he was just bold enough to put a perspective out there that people align to. And they might not necessarily have known it, but part of them felt it.
Yeah.
And that's what I love, you know, about these people that are antagonists in comedy is because they're getting past the ego.
Yes.
When we talk about politically correct humor, right? Like if you're making someone, you know, when they're laughing at you, they go, "Oh, I shouldn't have laughed at that."
Yeah.
You should have.
Yeah.
You should explore that.
Yes.
Right? Because that's something to go, hey, there's your contradiction.
There's the buffer. Yeah, that's the buffer.
Correct.
Well, this is, again, raises the question then, okay, well, objective truth versus subjective truth then. Right? My subjective truth is different to yours, right?
Yep.
I'm sure in certain elements. But is there a greater truth then? Is there something that sits higher than the subjective perception of reality? I'd probably say there is.
Yeah.
I've definitely experienced that when, you know, in altered states of consciousness where it's like you're one with everything, interconnected, and you know, this idea of the subjective ego is irrelevant.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, because that element, that ego is subjectively created by our own experience and what we are exposed to.
Yes.
So everyone's ego is going to impact them in a different way and how that's going to change their perceptions. But the perceptive process, again, that's something else I talked about in my podcast, your entire perception of the world governs your entire experience, right? And it's broken down into 3 key areas: attention, information, cognition. Output is perception. You pay attention to something, right? You take a look around what's in this room. What you take in, the information that you take through your sensory doors. Your mind has cognitive beliefs around what it is that's perceived in the information around it. And then your perception is what it spits out.
Yeah.
Right? And that is the basics of our perceptive function.
Yeah.
Now, being more conscious using that fucking executive front temporal brain of ours is what has come to evolve over time. Staying in that cognitive function and having the ability to rewire the subconscious and work through those egoic things, right? That's the growth for us as a species, as a populace, as humanity.
Yeah.
Is part of that evolution, is to focus on that executive brain.
Yeah.
Because the 2/3 of our, you know, there's something called the triumvirate brain. So we've got our brains in 3 sections, right? Basically got lizard, monkey, and then higher functions. Lizard and monkey are subconscious. So 2/3 of our brain are working against us because they will hold the preconceived beliefs and notions of who we are and what we do. You know, so the ego sits in the monkey brain. Our survival instinct sits in our lizard brain, right? But we have to use the threats that had evolved that software are now gone because we don't have predators. And our social groups have become so despondent as opposed to the tribe of 100 to 150 people that talk about, you know, when we were cavemen and Homo sapiens, whatever it is. But that's deep coding that sits in the back that doesn't serve us in today's society. It's about the front now. How do we work with the front, with our consciousness, with our awareness? That is what nature and God and the universe has given us, is the ability to logic and reason. And focusing on that is the higher purpose, I think. But people don't need to understand that and need to be given those tools.
Yeah. And I see that as a tool, you know, like when we're talking about some kind of higher higher source, or that we can tap into and resource. And I feel, well, I can never be 100% certain on things, but I believe that consciousness is not something that's created here in the brain. It's something that exists separate. The brain is like a signal we're receiving. But definitely we've got the mechanisms within them, the structures of the brain that we can rewire it, create new neuronal pathways by bringing focused attention to it. And as you said, these are tools that we need to employ because that's how we access that.
Yeah.
I was mentioning to you before about the work of Ian McGilchrist, who was talking about the different hemispheres of the brain, not in the traditional way that we know in terms of like left is emotion or right is, or whatever the other wrong way. Left is logic, right is emotion, but more that each hemisphere of the brain, like might not get this 100% right, but each hemisphere of the brain perceives the world in a different way. So that the left hemisphere is all about focusing in, it's about grasping, fragmenting, abstract, compartmentalizing things. It's about how we manipulate the world.
Yeah.
The right hemisphere is more about seeing the bigger picture. It's about seeing the interconnectedness of things. And what McGilchrist argues is that we've evolved to such an extent that the left hemisphere has become dominant. And so what that means is that we're exploiting the world for our benefit rather than seeing what our actions are actually doing.
Yeah.
And you see that in social media, like short attention spans, like we've got to just consume, boom, it's got to be in and out.
Yep.
We'll do things without thinking about what the repercussions are for others.
Yep.
The way that we've treated the environment. And so as much as, consciousness is something that exists outside the brain still plays a pivotal role in how we perceive and relate to the world, And again, that interesting that the left hemisphere is this almost kind of like it creates a delusion. They've done these studies with like right hemisphere lesions. So when people have right hemisphere lesions, they look at a building or a structure and they only see one part of the building. They deny the existence of the other. It doesn't exist. But then if they turn around and look at it from the other way, they see the other side, but then to deny the existence of the side that they just saw.
Yeah.
And so if this left hemisphere is so dominant in the way that we're perceiving our reality, what else are we not taking consideration of? What are we missing?
Yeah.
What are we missing? There's, man,
a lot.
And that for me is that curiosity. It's like, well, maybe we need to change the way we think.
Yeah.
And that takes work. It's not something that you can just flick like that, but constant attention and focus, because we can't keep going the way we're going.
Yep.
It's just not sustainable.
No,
it's not.
No.
In so many aspects, the way we treat each other, the way we treat the world, the planet, the earth.
Yeah.
All right, how do we change this? How do we do that? And as I said, I think going back to the very reason of like why I do what I do, for me, it's like I'm curious about this thing, and can we use these vehicles, music and comedy, to do it? And I'm, for me, there's like this almost like a level of excitement and intrigue because of what can we uncover. And I'm trying to connect with other people who are on the same path. I'm reading books and listening to podcasts, and I want to start a podcast of my own and explore this in greater depth, but from different aspects, in different systems, education, environmental, political.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to go about your talk about polarity, which is a big thing. It's a big concept in my world that I keep exploring, right? The yin and the yang, particularly the masculine and the feminine. We are in a highly masculine world because, the masculine has that drive, that direction that can, it is the destructive side of who we are, is the yang energy. The yin, the creative, the feminine, that is what creates growth, right? And we, in many ways, have obstructed, denied, repressed the feminine in so many ways. Even think about now, even right now, Roe v. Wade and things like that, right? This increasingly masculinized world that creates these mega structures of gray, right? And consumptive of the environment does not consider the abuses the nature of the giving nature of the feminine, mother nature.
Correct, yeah.
Right? And that is going to lead to a significant collapse over time. And we see that. And, it's only a matter of time before it collapses. And it's swinging back, right? It's swinging back in a way when we're looking at green energies. And, there are some progressive signs. But, that tipping point, it's that pendulum is going to swing back hard. And with that, momentum means force, means that things are going to be falling into disarray before they go back into that feminine side, into that balance that we see in the world. And it's nice that, thankfully people like us recognize that and are trying to nurture that and protect it and honor it. And so do many more people nowadays, right? You talk about the younger generation, and the youth always have. And unfortunately, to the detriment of the wider society that doesn't really facilitate that exploration, that creative side, unless it is actually manipulated for profit or for gain, then it just gets negated, right? And it becomes that commercialization that we talk about when people can just swipe past everything. So the exploration around that, I think, it's great. It's going to take some time, but I think it definitely needs to be masculine-led, because that masculinization of society around us, even to our own detriment, where we can't even be expressive, and now it's become fashionable for men to be vulnerable. Men should have always been vulnerable. Right? We had to sit in the masculine because what we do, we had to be strong and protective, right? But we disassociated with the feminine side of ourselves that needs the nurturing to fill our own self up, to be holistic. Only now we're getting to that point, which is great. But part of me wrestles with, is it too little too late? And what happens with that next? Because you've heard of Aubrey Marcus?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Aubrey's work and his podcast. And this is, I would say I'm a child of his and a lot of other people in this space, and about honoring the feminine and, creating a more healthy balance towards masculinity.
Definitely agree.
Right. And but that is the few and the proud at this point in time. Unfortunately, and that's a shame. But again, similar to what you are like, it's exciting for me to be able to sort of get on that vibration and push that frequency out, because then you see the on-rippling effects and how it affects the people around you. Because, good or bad, the universe is completely indifferent because it's so huge that it does not give a fuck about us, right? It's only because we are in our own little monkey mind.
We're the center of the universe, right?
Because that's, but that's, we are always going to think like that at a base level because every other animal does, right? Once you that's what we need to recognize, is that we are part human, part animal, part spirit. And that's what we're evolving to. And you've got to be grounded in the animalistic part of ourselves, the ego that has evolved from being a monkey that had to look out for predators to this divine being that is connected to the universe in some weird and ephemeral way. And it seems like it sounds like bullshit when you are still in that monkey ego mind, but when you release that, everyone gets to the same level of truth. They all want to just go towards love and light and peace. And they are less inclined to action and to create antagonism.
Of course.
And maybe are more aligned to the peace that can be attained by being in synchronization with nature. And the universe at large. But again, it's the few and the proud.
Look, I couldn't agree more, mate. I think, and approaching it from those different aspects that you said, the masculine, feminine forces that are at play, these are all, it's funny because the polarities are like a paradox, like you said in yin and yang. You can't have one without the other. The necessity to come together to create something new. So collapsing them, is a way forward. Well,
I wouldn't say it's collapsing; it's integration.
That's probably a better word. Integration in a way that includes, to borrow some integral theory, includes and transcends. It's part of it, but it's also something different. And And you can approach that from a spiritual perspective, especially more so now. I think we need that more than anything. The world is such a, as we've moved away from dogmatic religions, especially in Western society, and become more secularized, our sense of spirit is diminished, and we need to find our way back to that. And that's where, as I say, music, art, these things are sometimes the gateway to spirit. So from a spiritual perspective, from a psychological perspective, a neuropsychological perspective, emotional perspective, these are all ways that we can embody or approach a way of integration. And all just as valid, and then this is, there's so many forces at play. And there's going to be people in certain areas that are more adept to it than others. And I would love to find them and talk to them.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool? Like, I think so, because there's such a scope for us to learn, and this is the thing. When we think we're so certain and we know something, you don't know fuck all.
Yeah. It's the worst thing to be.
Yeah. And it's the people that think they're so certain and that they don't know that this is the truth. Stay away from them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because what you're grasping at nothing. You're holding firmly onto nothing. Literally nothing.
Yeah.
An identity, a perception. What are you holding?
What are you holding? Yeah.
Holding onto
and so much to defend. It's like, no, but this is my truth.
Yeah. It's
like, well, fuck, it's fine, but there is a truth. Why can't we work towards that?
Yeah.
Interesting that when you talk about psychedelics, and I definitely partook, definitely. And but in instances where I've seen people that have struggled with that state of consciousness have been people that are so strongly identified to the materialistic sense of who they are that when they're in that state of consciousness, they're grasping at this sense of being that isn't true.
Yeah.
Well, when I say it isn't true, it might be true to them, but when that's gone, well, who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I if I'm not these things that I've just spent my whole life thinking I was?
Yep.
There's something greater there, right?
Yeah, but they're so used to the compartmentalization, the
of course.
brain.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because
that reducing valve is like, pew, it's gone. It's like,
because there is safety in that.
Of course.
There is stability in that.
Yeah.
But, one of the common narratives when it comes to the hero's journey or any sense of growth is that trajectory between one point of identity to another.
Of course.
Like the monkey swinging from the tree. There is that moment in between that everyone is so afraid of. But that's the momentum that transcends and pushes the individual, the perception, the identity into the next
That's
evolution.
That friction, as those buffers dissipate and the shock comes through, that's the friction that creates the next step.
Yes.
That next part of the evolution,
Yeah.
And I studied psychology. I got a degree in psychology and did all that.
Yeah.
I didn't go on and do any postgrad work, but I've always been fascinated by the topic, and still, these years later, I still read, and I did notice you did the psychedelic therapy as a topic in one of your podcasts. Massive. I think that is when we can utilize these substances that have been given to us that are here naturally occurring most of the time. They're here for a reason. If we can use them in the correct way, I think there's a lot of profoundness to come out of it. There's a lot of growth. There's a lot of evolution, not only at the individual level, but at the collective level. When used properly. I'm not just advocating that anyone just go and use these things, but definitely as a way to shock the system a little bit, shock us out of this lull, this autopilot that we're all in, that we're all operating from, and seeing that interconnectedness between us, get out of that left hemisphere, seeing the bigger picture and appreciating that. That's another way, I think, forward out of these paradigms that we're stuck in.
Yeah. it is just the forest of hurt in the ego.
Yeah.
That's what it really is, that,
Yeah.
And that's the first step to awakening, is to understanding that you are more than the voice in your head. Right?
I have many voices in my head, man.
Yes. Don't we all? So many. But what you really are is the whispers behind the voice. The loudest voice in your head is most often the wrong one. And it's the actual, well, actually, maybe you're more of this, or maybe you should consider that, or what's this about?
Yeah.
But again, the hurt voice, the squeaky wheel in our minds is what dominates, because the brain, the mind, is so used to being that central part, right? Again, we're so used to listening to the frontal things that go, danger, right? Threat, problem. That's the evolution. That's the growth. And, people are, and that's the crazy thing, is like, we're talking from this, admittedly a high level of self-awareness and that high frequency and vibration. And it's interesting to me sometimes when I talk about this stuff, because sometimes it does seem a little bit fucking like holier than thou. When you mention that you're talking about, being enlightened and being that higher frequency, but it does exist. But again, I think it's Australia, the tall poppy syndrome of about talking about these metaphysical states and creating this. It almost creates a bit of a distance between you and the who you used to be. And there's a distance there. But I definitely feel this level of discomfort about saying, oh, yeah, you're still an egoic individual. And
of course. Yeah, definitely exists. But, enlightenment is not like it's a destructive process, though. It's not something that you just like, oh, I'm above everyone.
Yeah.
You got to go fucking in there and excavate through all that shit.
Yes.
And I think once... And it's an ongoing process. Like I said, you're never like, I'm enlightened. There it is. I've done my work. See you later.
That's completely wrong. And if you think you're enlightened, you're not.
That's what I'm saying. If you think you know and you know it, that's you don't.
Yeah.
And now I'm finding that out more. And as you said, like looking back on this older versions of ourselves, with love, and seeing that older version of ourselves in others and going, hey, fuck, I should do that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pass judgment. I'm just going to let that person in their own time. All I can do is like really just focus on what I'm doing and try and, and know as well, like you said, that there should never be a permanent self, If there is, then you never, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
You're just sitting there like a rock. Like, well, I mean, rocks probably have more impermanence than someone that's like permanent self in the egoic sense. But it's fascinating. I love it. I love meeting people. I love connecting with people that we can have these discussions with, because I honestly believe that, and getting away from this idea of, as another thing that just popped in my mind there, like this kind of tribalistic, this is my group, this is my tribe.
Yeah.
This is my tribe. It's like, holy shit, like this so strongly identifying almost to an obsessive point that this is me and this is who I am and this is what I do. And anyone that's against that is fucking wrong and you're shit. And it's like, wow. I mean, what happens if we didn't have this kind of tribalistic approach? What happens? Like, I've been asking myself these questions.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'll ask you, in what aspects of your life would you say that you're tribalistic? Could you name any?
Yeah.
Sport, maybe? Like
100%.
Follow a team and it's just like, ugh.
Yeah. But absolutely. Nationality, even being a comedian, any form of identity has the perception to be compartmentalized into a tribal aspect.
Yes.
And easily creates us versus them.
Yeah.
But that is hardwired into our system.
Yeah.
We need to understand that, right?
So I'm curious about is how can we unwire that? Or how can we still, as I said at the start of the podcast, how can we have divisions or distinctions without divisions? How can we still go, well, this is part of me, but this is also part of me. And I can flow through the soup.
Yeah. Well, it's the application of consciousness to those divisions, right? As the connective tissue. And what's the commonality? Not the lowest common denominator.
No.
What is the higher common denominator that we can look beyond pigment, gender, tribe, whatever it is. Correct.
Right.
And then what does that, again, where does that go? That's higher frequencies and looking above the matter of the now.
Yes.
Right? And being, again, that highness to it. That's the answer, and it always has been the answer.
Of course.
But the challenge is pulling people up with you.
Well, it's not even about, I don't even say pulling them up, but I'd say like facilitating the perception that they come to terms with.
Yeah.
I definitely think like, you know, when we talk about the evolution of consciousness, like we could sit here and we can talk about everything that's wrong with the world systemically. Now, we can either try and go in there and change that system from within, or we can find a frequency, a vibration of people that are thinking we need to create new systems. You know, we can't solve an issue with the same consciousness that created it.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, who are the people that are challenging the paradigms on all these issues that we've spoken about? How can we bring them together in such a way that we can create new systems and new paradigms?
Yeah.
To facilitate a world that is more caring, is more loving, that sees it, that where we see each other as part of this earth and nature, that we're not separate to it, and therefore don't destroy it. Can we increase the vibration of that consciousness by connecting with others with a similar view?
Yeah. Absolutely we can. And we're doing it now.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what's exciting about, and that's why I'm so optimistic about the now, is because it's never been easier to build and connect new things on every sense of every level, right? From the physical to the spiritual, thanks to the power of the internet, which is our collective consciousness, right? It's a digitized collective consciousness. It is a neural network, a physical neural network that works very similar to how our brains operate, with nodes and links and connections, and is communicating data at the speed of light. And that's what we are doing right now. So that is happening. The idea is that, yes, we've got to change the perception of from being outsiders to the new norm. This could be part of the new normal. This could be the fucking great awakening that everyone was talking about 12 months ago. But how far did that go as a concept, right? Because we are shifting away from that mainstream consciousness, that very simplistic, you know, turn over a new idea every 3 to 6 months, the latest war, the latest craze, the latest this, the latest that. It relies on us being forgetful. It relies on us not seeing the patterns and not seeing through the bullshit.
Yeah.
So it's very much possible. And we are doing that now. It's just a matter of how long will it take before it becomes the perspective? And the problem with that is, you know, if you think about how ideas and concepts permeate, right? Again, it is very similar to the neural network of who we are. We start off as these singular cells, right? Individual thinkers, individual ideas and concepts. We somehow make connections, and then we form a network. And then that network grows over time, and then it creates an institution, or, you know, it can be an organ in a metaphysical sense, right? But how long till that almost viral conception, right? If you think about it, like we're like white blood cells in a very plagued, you know, human being. How long until that takes over the rest, right? So it's happening, but how strong is the virus that we're trying to fight?
That's the thing. You know?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the constant challenge.
Well, this is the thing. It's like, as I was saying, do we fight the virus, or do we defeat the virus by creating something totally new, so that the virus can't thrive in that environment? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
we could go in there and try and fix all these systems, economic systems, where there's so much, you know, disparity between rich and poor. Educational systems where people don't have, as, you know, certain people who are marginalized don't get access to education.
Yeah.
we go through it all, environmental systems. Do we go in there and try and navigate our way and create something new with this virus there? Or do we just say, hey, can we create something different and build that consciousness here so that the virus can no longer thrive in that environment? That's an interesting concept because
people do that. People do that, right? Sometimes it gets pushed away as like the thing is, I don't think it's not very done effectively because usually it gets pushed into the fringes as a cult or some sort of hippie commune.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Because the problem with conceptualizing that external to the regular world is the people that are usually daring to do that are usually fucking got their own problems or agendas to make that happen. Right? Look at fucking, for example, like any cult.
Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah. Yeah. So people, that's the problem there. And we still rely on those systems. And, it is in some ways easier to just wipe things away and start again. Businesses do it all the time, right? They shed skin, massive layoffs, right?
Restructure.
Restructure the bullshit, rearrange that around. But there's fallout from that. Yeah. And then people are too afraid of the fallout and how it damages them to be really effective.
But is it actually creating something new or is it just like
it's
polishing a turd?
It is polishing a turd.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I mean, there are people that create communes and there are these networks of people that do that. But I mean, and it seems really compelling to me to do it as well because, a lot of the pages I follow on Instagram, for example, let's talk, you've seen Liver King?
Oh, fuck, yeah. This guy that, he's just fucking he's juiced to the max and he's like, no, I'll just eat like raw meat.
Yeah, bro, come on, bullshit. Come on, he's fucking hiding his fucking...
Pumping your ass full of fucking Decker or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah, and he's got his fucking hat on to fucking hide all the fact that he's got a massive bald spot just growing at the sides here. Let's be real, Liver King, let's be real, right? But there are so many people like that I follow that are just like, you know what, fuck the mate, fuck the world, right? What do you need to survive? Good food, good sun, good water.
There's a lot of truth to that though, right? I follow those people as well. You know?
Like Carnivore Aurelius and Soul Bra and all these fucking,
Paul Check.
I love
He's fucking great.
Yeah.
Who's the other guy? Certified Health Nut?
Troy.
Yeah. Great. Love him.
Yeah.
And there's elements of there's like elements of that. Like for me, COVID was a big eye opener for me. I was like, how can I be more self-sustainable?
Yeah.
And that's where I invested in I got a home gym now.
Yeah.
I don't need to go to a gym if there's fucking something happens. It doesn't bother me. I've got a sauna. Yeah. I've got all of that I need at home. There's always obviously elements to improve and whatever, but food, water, all of that. How can I grow my own? I'm curious. I want to do that.
Yeah.
And I think if we can be more like that, it's definitely going to be beneficial in the long run. Not relying on these kind of, supply chains of crap that come through and end up in this little fucking Kit Kat bar that you put in your mouth at a 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
When you could just be growing something healthy, But, but that's all stuff that, like I said to you before, it's part of our unraveling as well. You know? Because it's part of what our society is, It's the same thing that made me pull into the survey and go, I can get a chocolate.
Yeah.
I've done the work. Well done. Pat yourself on the back. Complacent.
Yeah. But
really,
there's so much unwinding to that, right? You're going to go out and fucking kill a cow for your steak?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Right? You're going to have to face some fucking...
Yeah, you're going to go hunt a deer fucking Rogan?
You're going to have to, yeah. But you might have to do that, right? Because, one of my things that I was thinking about 6-12 months ago, again, mid-pandemic was like, you can see how fragile the systems are and the people that run them. And it might be a fucking great idea in the next 5 to 10 years and I'm thinking about this, buying a big plot of land out rural.
Yeah.
An off-grid fucking escape route.
Yeah.
That's self-sustaining.
Yeah.
Get me a fucking Starlink internet. Yeah. Right? Away from all the bullshit and the terrestrial risk that comes from,
Yeah.
Because we still need that connection, right?
Yeah, of course.
All that. And just living, having that second option.
Yeah.
Because there are so many people that are unprepared for social fabrics to tear. And we got fucking close and we continue to be kept close to that. And now even more than ever, because we're seeing a tectonic shift in the powers that be at the power plays at the top level, political, social, economic, even fucking environmental now.
Of course. Definitely.
And yeah, it is an interesting thing to think about. Like, fuck, would this collapse of society? That's just a gigantic lesson to go, hey, we've gone too far in the wrong direction.
Have we? Yeah. Is there any way back? Even that's
it's going to shift us. It's going to shift us a few steps back as a collective.
Yeah,
right? We might have to fucking create another.
I mean, I sometimes go into really like nihilistic thoughts. I don't know if you do, but I try and snap myself out of it. But sometimes I'm like, fuck, just send an asteroid and just wipe us all out because we don't deserve to be here. Yeah, I sometimes have these thoughts, which isn't my prevalent way of thinking, but they creep in. And it's just like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
What the fuck are we doing to ourselves, to the planet? We don't deserve this.
Yeah.
Like, just fucking wipe us out. I'm happy. Come on.
Yeah. It's like, people worry about the human race being extinct.
Yeah.
And I don't give a fuck. We deserve it.
Yeah.
We, at our best.
Make your bed, you lie in it. This is the old saying.
At our best, we could be stewards of this planet and create amazing positive growth. And that's what we're talking about this for. That's what I aim for, is to be net positive in this environment, in this world.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of us are consumers, and very expensive consumers in many ways. And the materials that we can, the materials we consume for what? You think about the average person, right? Let's just say the average person lives at like 80 now, right? And if they've just worked a fucking desk job their entire life, right? Just been a real run-of-the-mill person, you think about how many calories, how many animals, how many things had to be poured out of the ground to give them a comfortable life.
Yeah.
For what? So that guy can fucking spout off bullshit and watch, 4 hours of TV a day? And he's got so many physical things that have, for what?
Accumulated over time.
Accumulated bullshit over time. Is that the way the planet had fucking designed itself to serve us? To cover it in concrete, in steel,
Come on.
oil.
Exactly. And ugliness and fucking,
Correct. And it just looks like, if you look at roads and you look at cities from a satellite view, it's a virus of grey.
It is, yeah.
The virus of concrete and grey and, these stable, comfortable environments for us to operate in. But that's not what nature is.
Yeah.
That is not where we came from.
No.
And again, it's like, this is when people say, oh, the planet's going to be destroyed.
Yeah.
No. It's going to.
The planet will survive. We'll get destroyed.
Yeah, it'll evolve. Right?
It
wiped the fucking dinosaurs out.
Yeah.
It came up fine, and just smaller creatures existed.
Yeah.
It's going to wipe us out.
Yeah.
And then in the immenseness of time and space, in 1 million years, right, we're not going to be even known to whatever is next for us.
Yeah, yeah.
Just like the dinosaurs didn't think they'd be being pulled up and turned into fucking cars. Right?
Yeah.
They were just going around eating stones and bullshit. Yeah. Oh, the Flintstones. Different story. But that's the thing is, like, again, when we are under threat, we shrink into our ego. Right? When we are in survival mode, we shrink into the basic faculties of our monkey and lizard mind for survival. And we don't have the space to think about the broader consciousness, the higher frequencies that we know and exist in. And that's why it's so important to unwind and sort your traumas out and whatnot, because that is weighing you down from thinking abundantly and positively in your life.
Of course.
So that's the practice.
And being aware when we're caught in those ego traps, you know, because it happens.
Yeah. One of the things I love to say is, like, when things are going bad, zoom out. Right? When you are thinking about, when you're feeling self-conscious.
Stuck in here and you're like,
and you're shrunk in this. Zoom out, mate. Where the fuck are you?
Yeah.
And that's why I like doing these psychedelic trips from time to time. Like last week, when I did it, 2 weeks ago when I did it, I was at, I went out to Lawn.
Yeah.
And dropped my acid, and I was on a beach, right? And I was on the beach by myself. There's holiday houses around, but I'm by myself, and I see just beautiful, massive coastal cliffs. And then I turn around. There's
I'm going to fly off this cliff. I can fly, man.
No, I can't.
Come on.
No, I can't. I swim like a brick. I don't even touch the water that much. But I'm tripping, and I see these big trees and these big mountains, and it reminds me how small I am.
Yeah.
Right? And it shrinks me down in a beautiful, humble way, because my problems seem so fucking small and insignificant in the enormity of what I am in comparison to the rest of the world.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of nature in general, is that it reminds us, it shrinks that ego.
Yeah.
Right?
And like, I mean, I live near the forest. I love going for my forest walks, sometimes in altered states of consciousness, but that healing aspect of it, like when you get away from the buzzing and that frequency and you're just there and you're like, wow, yeah, all those things that I've been worrying about are so inconsequential.
Yeah.
And then you just laugh.
Yeah.
You're like, what the fuck am I worried about?
Yeah. It's like you have no choice but to laugh. It's just, you can't help it.
Yeah. Because
this is the one thing, right? It's just, again, just that inconsequentialness of the experience and just laughing at it. So like, I've said multiple times, I was even deathly afraid to put myself out on social media even 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
I had to fucking like pull through and really wrench myself through making my first TikTok. I wanted to make a TikTok of my physical transformation and as to why I'm talking about this self-actualization and positive mindset and stuff was differentiating me from every other fuckhead that's on TikTok trying to, become the next shaman, right? It's because, hey, I've lived this, right? I fucking lived this. It's lived experience. And I put this clip together. It took me ages. I had to sum up all my courage to make this 1 minute TikTok. And I was like, I'm going to put this out to the universe. And I put it out there. And that was months ago, 6 months ago. And it took me, it just wrenched my guts. And I was proud of myself for doing it. But then I looked at it like 3 weeks ago. It's gotten 41 views.
All this worried about it.
All this worried about it. And no one gives a fuck. No one gives a fuck except for me. And I went through so much heartache. Oh, what is the world going to think of me? Right? Yeah. And I pissed myself when I saw that because I put hours of effort into it and I was so afraid. And then, I saw that. I pissed myself laughing for like 5 minutes. And even now, like, it's just like, like, I don't give a fuck anymore. But again, the ego got me, the hurt got me, the fear of being seen got me, right? It got me good. But then when you recognize that release, laughter is release. Laughter is release from the present moment or whatever has trapped you in that tension. That's what's so good about laughter. It is a release of tension.
Definitely.
And and that's what's so gratifying about it is that laughter is, and also like laughter has this amazing, like if you can laugh at something, it's extremely powerful, right? One of the things that Simon Sinek says, I don't know if you know him, but he's like this, he calls himself a professional optimist and he's got books on leadership and, he's one of those guys that loves TED Talks. He's a good guy. That sounded fucking cynical, but he's a good guy. But one of the things that sticks in my head that he said is that you can't laugh with someone and be upset at them and be angry or sad at them. Like laughter permeates a lot of other emotions. It almost trumps them all. And because, if you laugh in the face of fear, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Right? Because you are dismissive and there is that joy that sits in the laughter itself. And, again, that's an immensely powerful little dose of energy that is I'm constantly curious about and have now formulated a lifestyle to procuring and to manufacture and to create around that. And the power of laughter is healing. It's a very high frequency vibration, possibly the highest frequency that we have, or one of the highest, right? Besides love.
Love, yeah.
But, who do you love and not laugh with?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's almost hand in hand.
Yeah. Let's start with the letter L.
Yeah. Yeah. A bit of live, love, laugh. I should get that. I think
it should be ACN's motto.
Yeah. Well, maybe it is. Maybe we'll change it next. You get those nice little wood cutouts like every fucking middle-aged mum has in the suburban house. Get that from some shitty gift shop.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. See that in Granny Mae's or some shit. But yeah, it's, and that's one of the great things about the position that I'm in, really, is that I've been able to boil down my purpose in some simplistic ways, is that I am an alchemist of joy, laughter, love, right? That's what I focus on. That's, the left side of the hemispheric, the masculine brain that we talk about, is me creating the structures and the business and the labeling around whatever I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
But the right side of my brain, the creative, is focusing on the vibration, the frequency, the higher.
Seeing the bigger picture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Being the alchemist and the creator of the intangible.
Yeah.
And the creator and curator of that.
Mm.
A room full of joy, a room full of laughter, a team of people that are connected in purpose.
Yeah.
That is my highest focus and purpose. And every time I achieve something in that, I get shivers. Right? I get that energetic rush. That's the spirit downloading from the greater consciousness that tells me I'm headed in the right direction.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. And that, and that's why I feel so grateful to be in this position, no matter how difficult it is to start something from nothing, is that these are the grains. These are the crumbs that the universe lays out when you have taken the time to find the purpose and get rid of that bullshit that hides behind whatever the real truth is in there.
Yeah.
Right? Because, sure, we carry generations of intergenerational trauma, but we also carry generations of intergenerational success, intergenerational biological success that got us to the point we are now.
Of course.
People talk about, you've come from a long line of fucking winners, act like it. Right?
Yeah.
But there's an element of truth to that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's softened off in the last maybe a couple of generations thanks to agriculture and all societal methods, right?
Uh-huh.
But for a good while there, you had to be a fucking hard son of a bitch and you had to figure your shit out to be worthy of the prize of the feminine as a man, right? And to be worthy and to receive the bounty of what creation can provide to you.
Yeah.
And we've lost that way. And that's why we find these fucking disparities in the masculine and feminine, is because we don't know how to honor and be worthy or create worth of the feminine and what it can provide for us. And, that's what the shift in my perspective to a healthy masculine is now. Is to actually create, honor, safeguard the feminine, whether it exists in myself first and foremost.
Yeah.
Because that's whatever you fix in yourself creates that vibrational equivalency, that equal and opposite reaction in the world around me.
Yeah.
And that's probably another key thing when it comes to the spiritual journey for any man, which is, a spiritual man, a genuine spiritual man is extremely powerful, but probably rarer than the spiritual woman, I would say, because women are so much more attuned in their intuition to that.
Yeah.
But we have it too as men.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been following my gut and my intuition for the last 2+ years. That's what's got me to this point. But that also that means I have to accept the softness and the femininity and realign my own inner feminine to get to that point, and not discard it as negative or the other.
Weakness or whatever other terms we give it. Yeah. I went through a similar process probably, I'd say 6 years ago now, where, I had to really, that hardened armor that you'd created as a masculine, that toughened outer shell had to be kind of deconstructed and then rebuilt with that softened feminine into a healthier version of what masculinity represents.
Yeah.
All those other elements that come through it. So I totally relate with that, and I agree with you. Definitely, stepping into the feminine is one of those tools or those aspects that we need to achieve to get us out of this mess.
Yeah, and also it's one of the things I said when it came to one of my exes is that what I need the most in the feminine is the ability to take off the armor and feel comfortable doing it, right? Is that I want to come home from having the world on my fucking shoulders and be able to take it off in front of the feminine and have that nurturing, healing property, whatever that essence of what they are, refill me and recharge me because, I've created that safety and that security and that growth and that direction, right? But again, there is that part of the yang, that fucking white dot in the dark that needs that feminine refreshment. It needs that energy.
It's true.
And yeah, but again, men don't nurture that. And that becomes the fucking heart attack at 50 because you can't appreciate, Bill Burr said this, right? It's like, people fall over at the age of 50 because a guy can't say a fucking dog is cute, right? Which just got this fucking hardened sense of themselves.
Yeah.
And they just completely dismiss their softer side. And the good thing is now I think we're seeing that happen in general masculinity in more positive circles.
There's a lot more of that happening.
Yeah, particularly with, things where it really starts with men being able to just safely express their vulnerabilities and insecurities around a community of men that will support them and not, dismiss how they feel. So, there's lots of men's mental health awarenesses and, men's sheds and things like that. They're all amazing. Great tools. Actually, a couple of months ago, I applied for, I forgot the name of them now. Oh, shit. There was an organization that was it the Man Cave? Maybe something similar?
Oh, yeah, I did see them. They were looking for...
yeah, maybe it was the Man Cave.
I think I applied for that as well, to be honest.
Yeah, so I applied for that because I was like, yeah, it'd be great to be part of a community where it facilitates healthy masculinity.
Mentoring kids that are coming through. And,
yeah. So I applied to be one of those facilitators. I didn't get the role, but that's fine because I think I was doing it as a bit of a distraction. As a way to fulfill some existential gap that I had at the time because I was still trying to figure out what I'm going to do with the business with myself. But, being in a room with, men that are willing to do the work and be better and willing to, just pass that positive energy on was A, extremely refreshing, but B, almost rare. Like I have barely been in a room full of healthy, positive masculinity, in a room where men have are supporting each other and not competing with each other, right? And that's just because that's the inherent nature of who we are as men. We are built to compete. And but that aspect of non-competition, again, going full circle, back away from the ego, that higher consciousness and seeing others as the ability to add value.
Yeah.
As opposed to be a contender to compete with. That's one of the highest functions and highest benefits I see for us as a society.
Yeah.
Particularly in the masculine side is that leadership in integration with other, with the feminine and with healthier aspects of the masculine too.
Yeah.
And that's what gives me hope when you're talking about, do we have to necessarily run away, start our own communes, things like that? I would hope not.
Yeah.
Because there is that movement coming.
Yeah.
And it's going to take time and we're going to have casualties, right?
Yeah.
But again, that's because we are destroying previous paradigms and previous perspectives. Now, again, there's gray in all of that. So there is some positives that will be lost and there's some negatives that will be thankfully lost out of that as well. But hopefully this becomes this is the growing pain of evolving to a higher state as a collective. And that's what I'm hopeful for.
Yeah, I'm hopeful too, man. I mean, or otherwise we just get an asteroid that wipes us all out.
One can only hope. Or, COVID 3.0. New variant coming out soon.
It's coming out soon. Stay tuned. Geez, that was disappeared into a vortex.
I know. We should probably wrap it up there. It's just been over an hour.
Wow.
Yeah. Time flies having fun.
Oh, yeah, that was good work, man.
Yeah.
Absolute pleasure.
Man.
Thanks for having me on.
Man, it was so good to have you. Good to share ideas and concepts.
Always.
Where can the people find you if they want to hear more, see more of you?
You can check me out on Instagram, Gab Vargas Official, because I'm the only official one out there. And if you want to check out one of my comedic characters, Coach Cole Official.
Ooh, big reveal. You never really what that.
Well, I never do it, but for those that are watching, go check him out. He's just a footy coach I created over COVID. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Absolutely great to have you guys. You know where to find me because you're on it right now. Thank you so much for being a part of this Binges, and we'll see you next week. Ciao for now.
Yep.